your life in your 40s is this sweet time. All time is sweet, but man, this is sweet because you have your health, you have your energy, you have some ambition, you have some wisdom, you have some experience, you've developed some discernment by now, but yeah, you're still curious. Like, what does Route 66 look like once you hit Arizona?
Welcome to the Up Your Average podcast, where Keith and Doug give no-nonsense advice to level up your life. So buckle up and listen closely to Up Your Average.
Good morning, Doug. Welcome.
Hey, good morning, Keith. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be on with everyone this morning.
Well, it looks like you are enjoying the fruits of your labor and getting some sunshine, which we're not getting here in central Indiana today.
I woke up at 3:15 a.m., Keith, and Caroline graciously drove me to the airport where I could catch a flight down to sunny South Florida and had a nice little hour-long Uber ride to Marco Island. So hello from Marco Island. I'm down here connecting with some of my friends that we developed these friendships in our early 20s, well, late teens, early 20s. And so having friends is a big deal.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. Well, we've been talking about Paul and Bridget Williams. You named the wife in the olden days, and we've been picking different age points to talk about some of their financial planning issues. And we just decided today to talk about the 40s. What are we going to do with Paul and Bridget and their financial planning in the 40s? And in the meantime, I saw our Up Your Average number 53 was called The Sweet Spot, and that was talking to them about their mid-30s and some of the ideas they needed to know in the mid-30s. So we're just bridging forward about 5 or 10 years on this segment, and I just thought I'd let you kick off. And what do you think that 40-year-old Paul and Bridget need to think about as they're looking at their finances and their future?
Well, without knowing too much yet about Paul and Bridget, even though we've been walking through life with them a little bit, we when I think about the 40 or my 40s, I don't know what your 40s look like, Keith, but I will tell you, I'm like, what am I, 7 months or so removed of my 40s, and I will tell you, looking back on them, it was awesome. And I always think that you graduate to the next level of coolness. So I don't really sweat the glory days too much. But I will tell you, your 40s were really great. And so I stole a couple ideas from friends of mine who have lived through their 40s. And so anything I say could be, something I came up with myself, or it could be completely stolen and unsighted. And so I want to kick it off with this quote a friend of mine gave me. He says, nothing gets better due to lack of attention. If it is not getting attention today, it is the best it will ever be. And so if you just decided, I think this is the example he used, if you decided, you know what, I'm not going to walk for the next 3 months. And then 3 months go by and you decide, yeah, you know what? I think I'm going to go for a run today. It's not going to go well. And so in your 40s, it's important to realize, hey, what do I have going on in my life and what needs attention? What needs to be a priority? And as you graduate into any decade, I think it's great to take a pause and say, what was good about the last 10 years? And what are some things I'm looking forward to doing in the next 10 years? And that's a great place to start. So with that in mind, there's cycles in life, financial cycles, health cycles, family cycles, relationship cycles. And The only thing that's going to be the constant through those is you're going to be in motion. And in your 40s, if you're like me, you have a lot of motion going on. I mean, on the plane ride here, it was really fun, Keith. I took inventory of that motion the best I could. And one of the spots where I took some inventory, I'm going to skip ahead, was youth sports. You guys doing youth sports when you were in your 40s? Did you have some youth sports going on?
We did. We did. We were more of the kind of non-competitive ones with our kids, so we weren't traveling or doing anything like that.
Your kids will tell you if you're going to be competitive or not, and if you're in the non-competitive class, it's just fine. Yeah, it's just fine. But I wrote down, we did in our 40s, we did 10 organized sports and 12 unorganized sports. And and where that's important is you're taking inventory on what things might look like. I I reference back to the ages of our kids during my 40s, and it's wild to pause and think about it. But like during that time, Keith, like LJ went from 10 to 20, and Colton went from 3 to 13. Our dog went from 0 to 10. And so if you're going from 3 to 13 or 10 to 20, your kids are going to bring you along for the ride at some point in time. I mean, in your 30s, you're driving them around. They are going with you wherever you want to go. They have no choice in the matter. They are passengers. But in your 40s, stuff starts happening where you see what they're good at, what they're curious about, what their interests are. And as a dad, you can't help but want to just pour fuel on that. And so you're going to start going with your kids. You're going to go with them to coach pitch baseball. They're going to develop a love for running. They're going to do some sports that you didn't even know existed. And so, one of my friends, his son is a ballet dancer. He didn't even know that existed, but in his 40s, he went to a bunch of ballet concerts. And so you can crank that up or dial it back as much as your family wants, as much as your family culture dictates. Travel league sports are crazy, but if your kid's good, it's not that crazy. You should go for it. And so for Paul and Bridget, I would just tell them to get ready for a life of motion. And if all possible, just over communicate to each other. That way, no one gets left out. I think it's easy as your kids get older and get into more and more stuff. It's probably easy for one parent to really press in on it, and then the other parent to get left behind. And so if you can press in on it together, you're going to have a healthier marriage. You're going to have a better family structure and an overall better family culture. But right away, that's where my mind went, was the life in motion. Evaluate the ages and remember all the great times we had doing families or youth sports.
That was the first point that I had on mine, was family, and we were very intentional on family, and yet it's a lot easier to say that than to execute it because of the collision of life in your 40s. There's just a lot of moving parts that you maybe don't even have control over, and so that's a really big deal. I think I would encourage those that are on-ramping towards their 40s to, if you've not been good at time management, I would encourage them to take a time management class to really think through what roles really are important, because our podcast a couple weeks ago, number 78, was how to say no. And you just can't say yes to everything. I mean, for us, we had 5 kids, so it was geometrically impossible to say yes to everything. So choosing by the roles that are important to you, what do you say yes to and what do you say no to, is really takes some intentionality.
Yeah, it really does, and there's a lot of pressure to keep up with the Joneses in your 40s. E Because your kids are gonna be going to school, you're gonna be around more people, you're going to be seeing how other families move and how they act, and you're gonna get pulled a bunch of different directions, so being able to, number 1, know thyself and, be able to say yes to what you're all about and no to what is just tempting, that's a critical piece. At the top of my list, that's some of the stuff I talked about, Keith. I had the benefit in my 30s to building a foundation spiritually on just really wanting to know God and being known by God in a different way than I was in my childhood. When you turn 40, by now you've probably spent half, 20 years away from mom and dad. You had 20 years with mom and dad. And so you're really just in your stride of who you are as a person. And when you're in this stride, you're trying to lead as well. Maybe you have more of a leadership role at work, or maybe you have more of a leadership opportunity in your community. But all of that has to be based on the foundation of really knowing, who am I and what am I all about. And so where are you going to go to figure that out? And for me, thankfully, Keith, that was being challenged by a Bible study that you'd been living out your life, and it inspired me to think a little differently and challenge myself on who is Doug, and what's he all about? Like where am I going to operate from? Where is a position of strength that I can operate from? And I personally, I think that is found in God's word, the Bible. And so that I would encourage anybody to dig deep and ask yourself, don't shy away from the questions of, what is truth? Is there absolute truth out there? And standing on that, you can go through a lot of things, because in your 40s, I made a list of significant events, and Keith, at the top of my list, I had a good friend die. I had a friend get killed. I had a very good client die. A good friend of mine who's a client, he died. Grandparents, they died in our 40s. And then I have a whole list of just stuff that we went through. And, none of these are like, they're not really even micro casualties, but they're just stuff that you had to deal with. And boy, when you have a foundation to stand on, you can navigate that stuff from a position of strength and um, and really thrive through it.
That is really kind of core of what I thought about in the 40s. Is there's just, it seemed like for me, chaos was pretty prevalent in my 40s. My dad died when I was 40, 41. Mom, was diagnosed with dementia during that time frame. Caleb was born when I was 40, so I was sandwiched, dude. I had it. I was running a business, and I think we even had a little bit of in my 40s, had a little bit of conflict with the business, and so there were just a lot of pressure points, and maybe that's what fine tuned my hairdo. But I tell you, the process of what you said of having a foundation, and I don't know how you do any of this stuff without a purpose for why you're sitting on this planet. And that purpose needs, I think, to be much more than the roles that you serve, because those roles can be very temporal and passing. But if you can look at your roles as something that you're bringing value to those people in those roles, which is kind of how I frame my life. I'm in any role I'm in for what the other people get out of it. And if I frame my roles for what I get out of it, it causes a lot of bitterness, I think. And so it's just a choice everybody has to make about their purpose and what they're going about. But I too was dramatically revolutionized by that Bible study that my friend Bob wrote. And he told me, I don't know how many times we talked through my 40s, but I can't remember very many conversations that we didn't finish. That he just would tell me, Keith, I'm praying you choose the excellent over the good, and just say no to the good, and that was beat into my brain so much that I got really good at saying no and creating margin in my life during a very busy time.
Yeah, and one of the excellent things that we were able to do, and I would love to encourage, inspire, and think about the how to for anybody listening, including Paul and Bridget, is something that you led by example. You took a sabbatical. Did you take that in your 40s?
I did, yeah. It was
Yeah. Now,
scary. It was really scary because I had to let go of things, right?
yeah, yeah. And what did you do? What describe your sabbatical?
Well, I probably had to spend a year prepping for it because I had to read about it, think about it. The word sabbatical is based on a biblical idea, Sabbath, like to bring rest to your body, and I had to think through of delegating in a way that I really hadn't before. So that was the prepping for it, and I had somehow been mesmerized by Route 66. And I think yesterday was Route 66 Day. Somebody told me that celebration of 100 years of Route 66. And then I had this idea. This is how I roll. If an outrageous, not unrighteous idea hits my thoughts, I just execute on it, whatever it is, if it's outrageous. And I had never driven an RV. And so we planned, I don't remember, a 30-day RV trip with 5 kids. And we retraced Route 66 from Chicago all the way out to Santa Monica. And I don't know that I'd ever driven anything bigger than a Suburban. And so the very first day, I'm in a really difficult part of Chicago and not sure of what the clearance is out on top. Connie's not really on board with this whole thing. She's keeping her fingers crossed we're not going to die. And I make her get out and make sure that stop traffic so I could pull over so I don't rip the air conditioner off. That's within 4 hours of starting the RV trip. But we made it all the way to California and back, and it just really taught me a ton about life.
Yeah, and because you led and did it, we were able to do two pretty big trips in our 40s. One was in your RV that you graciously gave to us to use. Another one was in a good friend's Airstream. He allowed us to tow it out west. And and the common thing that I would hear when I would say, "Hey, yeah, we're going away for a month. We're taking a month, and we have no plan except to explore the West and hit these couple spots." The common thing I would hear is this: "Man, that must be nice." And I would say back, "Yes, it is." And then I'd say, "You can do it too." And so it's a mindset. Yes, you might have to take a year prepping for it. You need to be ready for some other people's feedback, but your life in your 40s is this sweet time. All time is sweet, but man, this is sweet because you have your health, you have your energy, you have some ambition, you have some wisdom, you have some experience, you've developed some discernment by now, but yeah, you're still curious. Like, what does Route 66 look like once you hit Arizona? And so to be able to say, I am curious about these things and I'm going to go do it. Well, sometimes you just need time and you need more than a week. And so if you're able to put together a convincing enough package to your family that this is a good idea and a convincing enough package to your coworkers that this is a good idea, I can guarantee you it will be one of the best uses of time in your life. And when my kids look back on their life, I think they're going to remember a couple things. And one of them is going to be those trips that we took out west, because who does that? It's ridiculous. And so I'm just so grateful. And as I reflect back into my 40s, those are a couple of my highlights. Everyone says, when I retire, I want to travel. I mean, how many people, Keith, when we ask the question, what do you hope to do in the next 2 to 3? It's always travel. That's number one answer. Okay, well, why don't you just start doing that right now? You can figure out how to do it now. Like with the money that you have, with the time that you have, you've got the ability to do this kind of stuff right now.
I think I've tried to lead by example in these things, Doug's, and not like hypothetically tell people you can do these things, but actually do it. And, a core principle of ours is to think differently. And when you look at what our industry is telling people, they're telling 20-year-olds you need to maximize your Roth IRA, you need to do all these things. And I don't hear many of them tell them they need to live adventurously. And so if you take risk, you definitely need to take risk in your 30s and 40s. You don't need, like, if you don't do it in your 30s and 40s, there's no way you're going to take risk in your 50s, I don't think. And so I would tell Paul and Bridget to take risks, that this is the time. And so if my industry is telling you can't miss a year or two on your 401k or your Roth, I'm telling you can. Like if your employer won't let you do these things, if you've got enough in your 401k and your Roth or whatever to maybe even fund some time to just transition between roles, I don't think you're going to regret it. It may scare you to death, but there are just risks that are worth doing. And your 40s is definitely, you should not avoid risk in your 40s, because you're setting a mindset that will become more and more passive if you don't do it in your 40s.
Yeah, and one of the things that happened for us is just paying attention to each other. Was we were able to talk about money easier in our 40s than we were in our 30s. And for some of you, you've been able to talk about money freely in your marriage, and that's an awesome thing. I am stoked for you. And then there's others where you've never been able to talk about money freely, either from some shame that's put on you from the past, or maybe some guilt, or whatever those barriers are. But I will tell you, in our 40s, we were able to talk about money more freely. And I go back to knowing thyself and who am I. And when you know those things about yourself, it's a little easier to talk about the areas where you may be weak, or it's a little easier to recognize where you might be coming on a little too strong. And then it's a lot easier to just kind of forgive somebody for like how they might operate in ways that just kind of make you question why. And so the money discussions, I think in your 40s, you're probably going to have more of it. You're probably going to be growing it. Your income's probably going to be going up, and your net worth's probably going to be going up, and all this stuff. And it's going to be real easy to try and keep up with the Joneses, because you are going to need stuff. I counted, we had 8 cars. Now I have 4 right now. We have two drivers besides me and Caroline. But 8 cars, really, I didn't think that was too bad. One of those cars is like our most prized memory maker. That thing took us all over the country, and so it was great to have one working car and one reliable car during that time. But you're going to be buying stuff. You're going to be buying grills. You're going to be buying leaf blowers and lawn mowers and all these things, and that's all good. But I think the main thing is to be able to have those open conversations with your spouse without getting the emotions cranked up, or even cranked down.
Well, the financial services industry years ago told me the peak spending year for people age is 49. but demographics has changed a lot since then. So I kind of looked that up, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics said it's that range between age 45 and 54. So you're going to spend money, and
Yeah.
a lot of that's your discretion how you choose to do that. But definitely, you're going to feel the pressure of more going out than you were accustomed to before.
I had the joy of attending a I don't know what this was up at Taylor. It was a really cool moment where the business school brought in a keynote speaker from a generous donor. And I had read this guy's book, this speaker's book in the fall, and he talks about the value of work. And he runs a $9 billion RIA, Keith. I
Nice.
mean, it's pretty impressive. And so he gets up and he's taking questions from the kids. And kudos to the Taylor University business students, because they had the guts to get up behind the microphone and ask questions. And the persons that she said, "Hey, what are some sound advice for me as I leave college?" And he goes, "This is not only sound for you as you leave college, but this is sound for you to eat your whole life. And guess what it is? You already know it. It's spend less than you make." And then he says, "Or just spend what you make." And when he said that, I really liked that. He said, "Or just spend what you make, but don't spend more than you make." And so in those peak spending years, yeah, your savings rate could even go down, but the impact, the stuff you're doing, uh, you're building relationships, you're building into your purpose, and it'll be the best money you ever spent.
I don't think I've heard a financial advisor offer this piece of advice, but this is what I'd offer 40-year-old Paul or Bridget, is to just plan at 40 that your career has 30 more years. Just accept that. And if you can accept that, probably a lot of the pressure is going to come off of you. But if you think it's only going to have 15 or 20, you may have to make some middle of the night runs to the emergency room with the pressure coming at you. So that's a life hack that I would encourage people. And you don't have to stay in the career that you're doing. But if you add 30 years at age 40, you're going to be able to do a lot more things than if you try to cut time out at the end of your career. You're going to be forced to do a lot of different things if you don't think a little differently about that. So that's just a hack I'd throw out there.
With that mindset, you're going to turn into a producer vision instead of a consumer vision, and that's where stuff starts happening. But I would say, like, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you do that, what I think people do when they start to think about retiring is I think they start coasting. And if you add an extra 10 years to what most people are thinking, you can't coast. You have to stay abreast of educate. You got to understand what's going on in technology. You have to kind of force yourself to stay relevant. And I think that would be a key thing to keep in mind is I probably need to be really relevant going forward into my 50s and 60s.
Yeah, which means probably mentoring down, being present, and then being willing to be coached from the bottom up.
I think having younger friends will do that for you, right? They'll give you a stink eye if you say something that's obsolete. They're not gonna let you stay in the past. So I think that's really healthy.
The only downside you can think of for your 40s were a few. And these are not that big a deal, guys. But for us guys, you're probably going to start losing some hair. You're probably going to carry. I packed 3 prescription glasses on this trip. I've got my computer glasses. I've got my normal glasses. Even my sunglasses are prescription. So, like, this next level of coolness, it's kind of got a different vibe to it, but it's okay.
I would argue up until this point, and it's still true, I think I was in the worst health in my 40s than I've been in my lifetime because I didn't prioritize taking care of my health. And then I realized when I started looking at pictures of my face kept getting rounder and rounder, and my belly did as well, that I set a goal for myself going into my 50s that I'd run 10 miles on my birthday every year. And so I had this lie in my head in my 40s that I couldn't start running then because I might have a heart attack. And then one day I realized if I don't start running, I'm going to have a heart attack. So it was a vicious cycle. But I would encourage you to work with your primary care physician to really step up a little bit. I heard on a podcast last week this idea of doing workout snacks, and the workout snack was doing on the hour 10 air squats, and so you can get up from your desk and do 10 air squats. Or there's things you can do in your 40s that won't necessarily mean you got to be in the gym all day long, but I would encourage you to really think about what can I do to up your health average.
Yeah, I can say for us, we've been able to find things to do actively together, Caroline and I, and whether that be water skiing or in the winter months, we like to hit the hot works, the hot sauna together. I mean, if you can find things to do together, especially under co-recreation, it will make the working out portion a lot more fun. And instead of something that you just have to do.
Another variable that really came in the 40s for us, Doug, was schooling decisions. And it wasn't necessarily higher education, it was all education. And that took a lot of brain time for me. I don't know that Connie was fretting as much as me, but there are a lot of things that I kind of observed in the education system. And I think the highest priority for me, for my kids early on, is I was biased towards reading, like the reading training they were getting, and the phonics was a real high priority for me because I had this opinion that if they can read, they can learn. And so I was really kind of focused on that variable in my 40s. It's just making sure the kids could read. And even in that time as a young dad, I was reading to the kids almost every night at bedtime because I found a book, something like the Read Out Loud Handbook or something, and I found the benefit of reading aloud to your kids helps create a curiosity of reading within them.
Plus, it can help you catch up on those Bible stories that you'd forgotten or didn't know anything about.
Well, I was reading them How to Make Money in Stocks by William J. O'Neill.
Yeah, right.
I was trying to get them to sleep. I think the other thing I would do in my 40s is probably doing box breathing, where you breathe deeply and breathe out deeply. But when I say breathe, I would give yourself room to be just making mistakes. There's going to be so many things come at you in your 40s that you're going to screw stuff up. And that's part of life. You're going to make mistakes. And I would learn to say, I'm sorry to whoever you blasted out of the ecosystem, because I know during my 40s, I blew up a lot of people and I didn't intend to. I just felt the pressure, and then I had to deal with things a lot more aggressively than I do today.
I think there's something that's happening right now. It's work hard, and I love to work, and maybe you love to work, but you have to find rest somewhere in your life. And so if you're working hard and then you're playing hard, it burns the candle at both ends. And you got to celebrate work, you celebrate your family achievements, but if you can find some way to rest, whatever that looks like for you as a extrovert or introvert, I mean, you got to find your style of rest, but that will fuel your ability to work and come home with some gas in the tank at the end of the day.
I think, along with that as well, there's a big temptation. And when you get into your 40s, you've got skills in your role. Usually you've got a network of people. You may be the one that the system is looking up to. And so you're all of those things can become like a god to you. And what you need to know is the system will take that away from you in about 10 or 15 years, and you need to find identity beyond your role. Even if you're having the greatest success that nobody cares much beyond your 40s and 50s. I mean, there's some people in their 60s that people are still idolizing, but that's not who you are. You are somebody much greater than all the roles that you're fulfilling.
Well, I would say to anybody who's thinking about their 40s, whether you're in your 20s, 30s, 50s, 60s, or 70s, if you're thinking about your 40s, it is the greatest time of life.
I
And to
would
get
encourage
excited for it.
I would encourage whatever age you are to find a 40-year-old and cheer them on, because they're going to need cheerleaders, because the world is going to be spinning for them. So if you're 80, find a 40-year-old friend. If you're 20, find a 40-year-old friend, because there's some cool things that can happen with those cross-generational friendships.
Well, that's awesome, Keith. Hey, I think the weed eater's coming for me. And so my sound's probably going to cut out, but this has been awesome talking with you via Zoom today. And I'm just grateful for everyone who tunes in. We get a lot of positive feedback. I know people have been telling me, "Hey, Doug, where you been? I've been listening to the podcast and Keith's killing it." And so you got a lot of fans out there, Keith. And I know a lot of people will tune into this one and be encouraged by it.
Well, it's a blessing to share some of our wisdom, Doug, and we just keep pushing it forward and bringing ideas to help others to think better about their future and to up their average as well. See you soon, Doug.